Hello, Friday, folks. Those of you hearing this on the radio anyway, YouTube folks, it may be, gosh, I don't know what day it would be for you, but glad to have you tuned in. It's the Town Meeting Talk Show, brought to you by Cordova Wireless Communications. And, of course, this is our on-demand talk show. We used to do it every day, and then nobody really participated, so we said, well, maybe this doesn't need to happen every day until somebody asks or we find somebody to visit with or whatever. Then the rest of the day we'll just play more music. And of course, I'm reminded every time we go through that if you ever have any ideas for a program, please pass them along by calling or emailing or Facebook messaging or whatever works for you. Sponsor, of course, as I said, Cordova Wireless Communications, your only homegrown, locally owned cell phone provider, with, of course, a very strong commitment to our community and a belief in the future of Cordova because they keep your money and support right here at home. It's not flying off to Valdez. It's not going to Anchorage. They don't evaporate like that other company that used to, they got everybody to use their phones and then they decided, oh, we're not going to serve them anymore. We're going to take away the phones and we're going to take away the TV and we're going to take away the internet and the whole thing. Cordova Wireless isn't going to do that to you. And, of course, they know Cordova's conditions, which is why they offer phones that work here with all the waterproofing and water resistance and the various cases that help. Learn more by calling Cordova Wireless at 2300 or stop by the office on 2nd Street. Now, today, crisis is such a popular word in this industry. Everybody goes, oh, this is a crisis. We have a crisis of this. And, we have that guy has stinky pits. We have an armpit crisis. And that's something but, and what's annoying about that is when you have something that is actually a crisis, it just kind of feels like it gets buried. But I've been hearing for a while that the foster family situation in Alaska is not great. And so you think about a situation where kids who need to be placed in foster care, which would be one of the most traumatic things that could happen to them. Excuse me. Imagine in the midst of all of that, not having anywhere to be placed because there aren't enough families interested in this possibility to say, yeah, we'll do that. We'll be there and fulfill this important community need. A lot of people, of course, are nervous about it, feeling like they don't have the answers to how they would do it, knowing the challenges that can be involved from stories that have circulated around. So if you are interested, you may be thinking, well, how do I start? And that's what the Alaska Resource Center for Families is. And we're going to be talking today with their program director, Desiree Scott. You might remember a little while back we visited with Jody Von Brandt from this same organization. And if you ever want to hear that program, it's on the YouTube channel, Cordova TV, youtube.com/Cordova TV. But I got an announcement from the Alaska Center for Resource Families that they were having another series, really, between now and the end of mid-April of these introductory orientations for anybody who's just interested. You don't have to be committed. You don't have to have talked to your family and already made the decision, hey, we're going to do this. If you just want to learn about it, that's what these orientations are for. And they're all done over the phone or Zoom, so you don't have to go anywhere. And you'll get, as Desiree will describe, you'll get a lot of information that can help you make that decision. So that's our topic today. And if you're really interested, incidentally, in what you hear on the 9th, one of these Zoom sessions is tonight. Now, that one is specific to what they call relative caregivers. In other words, if a kid needs to be taken out of their primary home and live temporarily somewhere else, then to let grandparents or aunts and uncles or any relative that might take the kids in, let them know how to be ready for that. And then they have another type of these that is for all the different types of resource families. But these orientations are coming up March 9th, March 19th, April 1st, April 13th, April 16th, and we're going to share what they are and what they're about and what the Alaska Center for Resource Families with their program director, Desiree Scott, our guest today on Town Meeting. Let's start right in, Desiree, by getting to meet you, for starters. What is your history in Alaska? You born and raised, or did you come to us from somewhere else?
Yeah, no, I was born and raised in Alaska. I left for a couple years, went to school, and then I came back.
Yeah.
All of my family's still here, so I just made my way back with my kids, and here I am.
All right. And how did you find your way to the Alaska Center for Resource Families? Because being a program director is not low on the ladder.
Yeah. Before this position, I was with another organization and I was a program director there as well. And I oversaw our kinship program. So working with relative caregivers who were raising relative children, both formally through the OCS foster care system and informally. And I saw this position come available, and I got really excited to be able to work with families in all parts of the journey of the child welfare system. And so, I came here. It's an exciting opportunity. I'm really happy to be here.
And where are you? Are you based in Anchorage? I forgot to ask.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm out of Anchorage.
All right. Well, let's for anybody that maybe didn't hear our show with Jody a while back. That's Jody Von Brandt, and that show, by the way, for anybody who wants to hear it, is on our where we archive all the shows on the Cordova TV YouTube channel. But maybe start, Desiree, by telling us a little about the center, the Alaska Resource Center for Families, and the role that it plays in supporting families.
Yeah, the Alaska Center for Resource Families plays a huge role in supporting all resource families in Alaska. We provide statewide training and support for all what we consider resource families. So resource families are any foster parents, adoptive parents, guardianship, relatives, close family, friends. And our bulk of our job here at the Alaska Center for Resource Families is to just make sure that caregivers have the information, skills, and support that they need to provide a safe home for youth in foster care. Again, we have offices in Anchorage, Wasilla, and in Fairbanks, but we provide support for those resource families statewide. I think what's really unique to us, we are also able to provide those resources and guidance for licensed and unlicensed relative caregivers as well. Which I know there's quite a few relative caregivers more out towards Cordova. And so that's really unique with ACRF here.
Okay.
Again, we're really just here to make families feel informed, make them feel confident, make them feel supportive, and just provide a place to ask questions throughout their entire caregiving journey. Because you come in thinking and feeling one way, and then by the time you've been in it for a while, you have different feelings, different questions, different kids a lot of the time.
Yeah. Well, that can be said of any type of family, but it's great to have those assets. Now, I was looking at the news release where you have these events coming, if I could find the right part of the screen. So these informational sessions, orientations, actually. So if somebody decides to join one of those, and there are ways to do it by Zoom or by phone, what is one of these sessions? What happens? What can people expect?
Yeah, so our orientation is typically a family's first step in becoming a licensed foster parent. So we have our regular resource family orientation, like you said, via Zoom. And then we have a live session or not a live session. Our Zoom is our live session. And then we have a pre-recorded session on our website as well for families to be able to attend at their own time.
Sure.
Orientation exists to, again, as that first step of giving potential prospective foster parents an idea of what foster parenting in Alaska looks like, what is needed and expected out of them, what the youth in care need, because ultimately that's why we're all here, is to support the youth in care. And then also it goes over our licensing process in Alaska. So what does it actually take? What are those logistical steps of becoming a licensed foster parent? The unique part about the live Zoom or telephonic orientation is that we typically have an OCS licensing specialist there in attendance to help answer those specific licensing questions that families have. And then in addition to the regular resource family orientation, we also have a relative orientation as well. So that goes a little bit, it's a little more specific to those relative caretakers, those kinship families, and it goes a little bit more into detail about what it looks like to be a relative caregiver. There's obviously different dynamics when in play when you're caring for a relative child versus just a child, any other child in your community.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, orientation is really just to give a good overview of what the OCS system looks like in Alaska and why there is a need for foster parents.
Yeah, and that's I've heard at a number of meetings I've attended and articles and so forth about this need, that it's pretty serious in Alaska. So. And I would think particularly in rural communities. So talk about that. Have we got a big deficit of families willing to take this on?
There's a huge need for foster families in Alaska. We're seeing an influx in kinship placements, which is amazing. That's ultimately what would be preferred, is for the child to remain with family, of course. We're seeing a lot of more child-specific placements as well. So people are becoming licensed for one specific child versus just general foster care. I think Alaska is unique in that there is so much rural community, so many rural communities, so many remote locations in Alaska. And so so there's a huge need in those rural remote locations for just lower population to begin with.
Well, and not only that, but the tribal considerations too, because I know it's very important. I can't remember if it was something I heard on the news or maybe from my conversation with Jody last time, but anytime you can keep, if you can't keep a kid within the family, at least to keep it, if you're talking about a tribal situation, to keep it within that tribe, to keep the culture consistent for the child.
Exactly. And I think that's what leads to such a need in more rural Alaska, because there are so much more tribal involvement there. And then ultimately, like you said, when we are removing kids from their home and there aren't those local families, they oftentimes do have to relocate out of their communities into these larger hubs like Anchorage, Fairbanks, Matsu. And so when we have more families specifically in rural, there's a larger pool to choose from for foster or for placements. And so we are able to keep kids connected with their school, with their culture, with their tribes. And then obviously, when we keep local placements, it minimizes just general disruption for the kids, because I can't imagine just being uprooted from where you know and grow up and having to go to another community just because there isn't placement in that community.
Yeah.
So there's a huge need.
Well, and very often, of course, for a situation that the kid didn't cause. And, so trying to understand that, the fact that the kids, because they don't necessarily understand the adult dynamics, they'll have a tendency to think, well, this must all be my fault. and so they're coping with all that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, to at least be able to have them within, connected to their community, preferably with extended family. I take it you have seen over your time how important that is. What are some of the things that, I mean, a lot of it seems kind of self-evident, but what are some of the things that stand out for as far as why that's so important?
I think when I think deeply in it or think a little further into it, obviously keeping them at their school is important and keeping them near family to be able to promote that family contact still when it's appropriate. But when I think about it is there's so many youth who have form those other trusted relationships in their community. And sometimes their local basketball coach is a trusted, safe adult for them, or their teacher, or the librarian. And so that is so important to be able to keep the youth in their communities with these other relationships that they've formed with their friends that they've have. That's important for any child, just be able to provide that consistency and that predictability. And they know we know there's trauma that comes with being removed from your home. And so when you're removed from your home and then your community and then the people that you surround yourself with that you feel safe with, just causes additional disruption during already, like you said, this really hard time that is traumatic.
Yeah, for everybody. Often for you guys too, as I remember talking to Jody about. What are some of the most important things then that children in foster care are going to need from these adults that embrace them?
Yeah, this is a great question. This is one that we like to touch on orientation. And really, as adults, I think it's so easy to come in and be like, I can help this kid, but really looking and making sure that you're able to provide what the kids need. Again, that's ultimately why we're here. I think first off my mind is an adult who can provide basic stability for a child. This is such an uncertain time for kids. So being able to provide that stability, being able to provide, it sounds silly, but just predictability for them as well. If they have a routine that they've kept every day, they wake up at the same time, they go to the same school, they have a routine, being able to continue to provide that predictable routine for them to the best that we can, obviously. Being patient, they are going to need patient adults and patient caregivers. And then I also like to think of just being able to provide that not only physical safety for them, but mental safety as well. That's going to be so important. Again, this is such an unknown, uncharted territory for kids a lot of the time. And so being able to provide that safe environment where they can be not only physically safe, but psychologically safe as well. And then again, I think a big thing that we need to be able to provide is having adults who understand that these youth and their behaviors, their big behaviors they may experience, they may display, are often going to reflect their past experiences. There's going to be huge behaviors a lot of the time, especially immediately upon removal, and really these big feelings. And so making sure that you understand that, one, that's normal. And I think that's where that patience needs to come in as well. The patience, the understanding that this is not typically a reaction to you as the caregiver, but their past experiences. And sometimes these kids have been on survival mode for a while. And so I think that's just adults who are understanding is really important. And then ultimately just showing these kids that you care, that you're that you're a safe adult, that you care, and that you value them and their well-being.
Well, and it seems like open-mindedness would be really important too, because I would think, say with a younger kid, you could get one that just doesn't just wants to be in the corner, or you might end up with one that ends up being really clingy, that for whatever reason sees
Absolutely.
you as a safe, as a source of safety. And I hear too it was interesting as you were talking. I was thinking the orientations can be good not only for people who are sort of on the fence about this and think, well, I know this would be a good thing to do, but I don't know enough about it. I'm not really sure, on the one hand. And then on the other hand, people that think, oh yeah, no, I understand exactly what to do. I raised my family and whatever, was involved in some kind of career where you were working with kids. So I got this all figured out. And what they'll probably learn in orientation, of course, is that, well, yeah, I mean, that maybe puts you ahead a little bit, but keep an open mind.
Exactly. And every kid reacts completely differently.
Yeah.
It's everything. I have 3 kids myself, and each one you give them a different situation, they're all going to react differently. And so that's no different
Mm-hmm.
from any of the youth in care as well. So yeah, you're right. I think that's a really great opportunity for people exploring with or coming to orientation.
Okay, well, on that subject then, for anybody who's interested in learning more about foster parenting that has, again, whether it's something you feel called to, uh, or it's something you've heard about where there's a great need for this, which there is. I mean, I've heard it many times in my line of work. How do people that want to learn more about foster parenting do that? What's the first step?
Yeah, again, that first step is truly orientation. That's if you called our office right now and said that you're interested, that's where we will most likely send you. We'll give you some information on foster care generally, and then really encourage folks to attend that resource family orientation. Um, that truly does, it's the first step for a reason, and it's not to convince anybody to become a foster parent. It is just if you are interested and you are on the fence of this might be a good fit, this may not. That's a really great place to go to learn just more about what the needs are, if this is a good fit for your family as well, because I 100% understand that it's not always a great fit for some families. And then making sure that you have the capacity. And so, like I said, that orientation just gives a really clear picture of what foster parenting looks like, the expectations of you as a foster parent, the expectations of OCS as well, what that licensing process looks like. We also go over what supports are available as well, making sure that the people know that the supports that ACRF provides. So once you get into this journey, you're not just thrown off the deep end and told to swim. We're
Yeah.
here to help as well.
Yeah. Now, how long again have you been in this position?
This position, I've been in here a little over a year now.
Okay.
Yes.
Is that
Still here.
is that enough time for you? Something I always like to ask folks in nonprofits, which of course can be some pretty unforgiving work. Have you in this area? Have you been exposed to any just amazing stories where you kind of looked at a situation and said, "Wow, that really worked," or have you maybe not been at it quite long enough to have accumulated many of those?
No, I think if it was primarily from my experience just with Alaska Center for Resource Families, um, maybe not as much, but I think that I bring a unique perspective because of my previous role. Also working with families going through the child welfare system. Absolutely. I've seen pretty much every outcome, good and bad, kind of
Mm-hmm.
come from um, with families and foster care. But I think for me, what I get most excited about is the foster care is supposed to be temporary. Um, the goal of OCS, the goal of foster care is reunification. And I think for me, I personally get the most excited when I've seen families, and in my previous role, I provided some clinical support as well. And so I've seen some families come in supervising doing therapy with families of youth who are in actively in foster care, but doing some support for them and their birth family as well. And I've seen the reunification happen after the time in foster care. And I think that is so beautiful to me. I think another one that I can think of as well is when the bonds are formed with the foster parents. And I've seen the birth families, I've seen reunifications happen or not, but I've seen those reunifications happen where they still, after reunification, we're still calling on the foster parent to be a support for the child. Because again, they've sometimes been in their home for years.
Yeah.
And there's these connections formed. And like I was saying, having those safe, stable adults are so important. And the foster parents can then become that safe, stable adult for them for forever.
Yeah.
Like I've seen kids just grow up now and be with, like, still rely heavily on their foster parents after reunification. And I think that is beautiful.
It expands the family, really, in a way. It's almost like getting another aunt and uncle or another set of grandparents or something like that when it all works out.
I think that's just amazing, because that's what we're here for, is to give more care and support to these kids.
And we're talking about a broad range, obviously, of information and things that you want people to know. But, is there one kind of most important thing you would like for people to know about your organization or about fostering, a message that really captures what you want to get out there?
I think for us, and what I would want people to know about our organization, is that we are available. And I know that sounds very general, but if there's any questions or any support or any crisis that families are going through, we're available to help provide guidance. And then if we don't know the answer, we will do everything to find an organization or somebody else that does know the answer. And so I think that's what I would want people to know.
Just the availability, the openness, no stupid questions, that kind of thing. We're here for any and all of it. Well, and you're the second person I've talked to now from ACRF. It was interesting talking to Jody Von Brandt before, because she came at this from having been a child in the system, and then I think she said maybe doing some fostering of her own later, or really understood it from both sides. And of course, and thankfully things worked in her case. So she was very passionate about doing that. You clearly, are enthusiastic about it too. It matters to you. So thanks to all of you who are working in this very important area. And lastly, what are the best ways for people to get in touch with you if they want to know more?
Yeah, I think the best way to get in touch with us is, I'm always going to say our website, right, www.acrf.org. And then on our website, we have a contact us button, and it gives you the address for any of our physical locations. And then it'll also give you the phone numbers for all three offices as well, including our toll-free numbers. So for families in more rural Alaska. Yeah.
Boy, I guess there is still long distance, maybe, if you have a landline, isn't there?
Yeah.
I'm so used to not having to worry about it anymore with the cell phone. Well, Desiree, it's been a great conversation. We're happy to support this effort. We know how important it is in Alaska, like you said, with our size, with all of our different cultures. And there are definitely, while a lot of the horror stories may get shared more or are clickier, there are a lot of great, inspiring stories out there too of successful outcomes from this situation. So keep on the good fight. And if there's a need for us to visit again, I certainly hope you'll get in touch with us.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Alaska Center for Resource Families Program Director Desiree Scott, our guest on the Town Meeting Talk Show today. Again, ACRF.org for more information. I'll remind you again, if you're listening on the radio, March 9th, one of those orientations for relative caregivers is tonight at 6 over Zoom. An all-families one will be held the 19th at noon over the phone, and then they have another all-families one April 1st at 6 p.m. over Zoom. The last two will be Monday, April 13th at noon for relative caregivers. That's a Zoom meeting, and then another all-families session Thursday, April 16th at 7 p.m. over the phone. And again, if you go to acrf.org, and I'll put this for those of you that are listening online or might recommend to somebody that they catch our online version of this show, which we urge you to do, by the way. If you know any family that's interested in this or maybe tried it once and it didn't work, but they think they might want to get back into it and get kind of a fresh start, please feel free to let them know that we did this show and keep an eye on our YouTube channel for the link to go up, which I hope will be later today on March 9th. But in the description, we put websites, so acrf.org will put one up for their calendar of these events as well. It's a noble thing to consider, and there's a big need in the state, especially for cultural reasons, as we said during the conversation. So we hope you'll give that some thought. And we also hope that if you need a mobile phone that can handle what Cordova can dish out, talk to the wireless company that knows Cordova best, the one with Cordova in the name, Cordova Wireless Communications. You can learn about the variety of especially waterproof and water-resistant options for phones. They've got the rugged type, of course, that can handle a drop or getting dusty or sandy or wet, because they know what a fisherman or hunter or any Cordovan is going to be up against better than anybody else. So call Cordova Wireless at 2300. Stop by the office on 2nd. And a big thank you to Cordova Wireless Communications for sponsoring today's program, the Town Meeting Talk Show. If you ever have any ideas for a guest, or you want to be a guest, just let me know, and we'll set something up. As you can see, the whole thing is very podcasty. It's not like a radio talk show, getting to the bottom of the thing and exploring and digging. And no. There are plenty of other people doing that. We don't need to do that. We're going to stick with this and help people get their information out. So if you have some that you want to get out to the community, just let us know. Everything you are entitled to information-wise in the 10 a.m. hour is coming up. Calendar, Tradio, Fish Radio, I think all on the way, if I remember the schedule right. And until next time, thanks again for listening to Town Meeting.